Hi class, today I will be discussing Woodstock Nation by Abbie Hoffman. So a little background information. Um, Abbie Hoffman was born in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1936. From a young age, during his time in school, Hoffman was already considered to be a troublemaker. He would do things like vandalize school property, start fights with other students, and play pranks on people. Best example of this disorderly behavior is probably from his sophomore year of high school, where he wrote a paper about how God does not exist, and his teacher ripped it up in front of him and called Hoffman a communist punk. And in response, Hoffman proceeded to jump on his teacher and start fighting him until he was restrained and then expelled from his school. So we can see that even as a young teenager, he always questioned authority and liked to rebel against it. So later in his life, in his protest, before becoming a leader of the Abbie movement, Hoffman was an anti-war activist during the Vietnam War and was known for using humorous and theatrical stunts in his protests. One example of these theatrical pranks was in 1967, where he led a group of protesters to the New York Stock Exchange, and they threw a ton of both fake and real dollar bills, to which the traders rushed to go pick them up. And there were the conspiracy trials, where Hoffman and his group, known as Chicago 8, were tried and found guilty of inciting riots. In these trials, Hoffman and his crew pulled numerous pranks and exhibited rebellious behavior, which gained plenty of attention from the media. These charges were later overturned in appeals. At Woodstock in 1969, Hoffman famously interrupted the Who's performance in an attempt to protest the imprisonment of John Sinclair, who is the other guy we had to read for today. Peter Townsend, lead guitarist and vocalist for The Who, actually chased Hoffman off stage and hit him in the back with his guitar, which I thought was pretty funny. So in Woodstock Nation, Hoffman writes that he was actually having a bad LSD trip, which is what prompted him to interrupt The Who. And Woodstock Nation was written by Hoffman while he awaited his trials with the Chicago 8 when accused of inciting riots. And the book, Woodstock Nation, really describes Hoffman's experiences at the iconic 1969 Woodstock Festival, but also what his goal is in all his protests. So one theme I found in our reading was that of functional anarchy. And the quote I have for that is, if I had to sum up the totality of Woodstock experience, I would say it was the first attempt to land a man on the earth. Page 12. So as Hoffman states in Woodstock Nation, he believes that the event of Woodstock Festival was one of the greatest events in American history. At Woodstock, Hoffman saw a vision for the future of American society, where essentially people had this complete freedom, and he believed this kind of freedom was the most truthful to our human self, which is essentially what he means by landing man on the earth, returning to our true selves. Another theme I found in this reading was that of cultural revolution. And the quote I have for that is, cultural revolution requires people to change the way they live and act in the revolution rather than passing judgments on how the other folks are proceeding. So Hoffman saw himself as a cultural revolutionary, and he often critiques the government and the capitalist system found in America as oppressive systems, which undermine people's true spiritual selves. We can find him critiquing the government later on page 75, where he talks about the government putting protesters in prisons and wiretapping, all part of what he calls this wave of oppression, and essentially what he is fighting to bring an end to. Another theme we can find throughout this reading is power to the people. And essentially it's Hoffman calls for a society where the people are fully in charge. The quote I have for this, what we are for, quite simply, is a total revolution. We are for a society in which the people directly decide and control the decisions that affect their lives. Page 77. So, towards the end of the section we read, Hoffman lays out how his main objective in his protest is to bring about a revolution in society where the government no longer controls every aspect of people's lives, but instead the people are in control and can make decisions for themselves. One last theme I saw in this reading was about Hoffman's theatrical stunts as protests. And we can find that in one of the conversations where it reads, "Let Vin reaching for the bill. Let me see that." And Abbie pulling it back and ripping it slowly into pieces. "Hey man, we've already run." So in this part, Hoffman rips up the dollar bill to symbolize how we have let greed control large aspects of our lives, and that we must move away from this life in order to stop suppressing our spiritual side. So, some discussion questions I have. First one, what do you think of Hoffman's juxtaposition between the privileged musicians to the suffering concert goers at Woodstock and the fully armed riot police to the vulnerable rioters? Is this intended to represent a microcosm in American society? What is your opinion on Hoffman's use of theatrical stunts to protest? Is it effective in gaining new followers? Does it take away from his serious message? And lastly, what values found in Hoffman's vision of Woodstock Nation does he wish American society to adapt through a cultural revolution?